are authors Richard Blackaby and Carrie Blackaby.
I think the Spirit of God knows exactly what you should do with your kids, and listen to Him, trust His voice, and have the courage to act on what the Spirit of God's telling you.
Pass it on, share the gospel clear and strong. Stand for, claim your heritage of truth.
Hi, I'm Sheryl Giesbrecht. I'm thrilled to be guest hosting for Jeanne with Heritage of Truth. And with me today are authors Richard Blackaby and Carrie Blackaby. They are a dynamic duo, a father and daughter team, and their book, Rethinking Best Parenting Practices So Your Child Can Thrive. What a great title. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Well, I'm the father in this partnership, and have 3 children, married to Lisa, and been a pastor, author, speaker, and had the delight of watching all 3 of my kids now in their 20s embrace serving God, walking with Him. What a delight to see that each of your children embraces your God and your faith. And what a delight to have my youngest child, my only daughter, my favorite daughter, with me to write, first time to write a project with her, and what a thrill it is, and she can introduce herself.
Yeah, as he mentioned, I'm his favorite daughter and probably child, but he won't admit that. And this is my first book. I'm a graduate student right now, so
Great.
Got about a year left of school. And then we'll
Great.
see from there.
So tell us about how it was, the process of writing the book as a father-daughter team.
You know, it was delightful, especially writing on family, because we both were part of it. We both had different perspective on it. I tell it from a parent, she tells it from the child. And so that was a really interesting dynamic. I've read a lot of parenting books that were written by the parent, and they tell what they did, and sometimes you wonder, I'd like to talk to the child about that and see if it was that black and white and easy. And sometimes you read books from the children, and at times it's quite anguished about the memoirs and dysfunction and hurt from growing up as a child. And so we thought it was really exciting just to write it together and put in, as we looked at stories and issues. And I would say, Carrie, now you write this from the child's perspective, what it was like, and let me write it as the parent's perspective. And so that was fun.
So this was from your own personal experience?
Yeah, we pulled a lot of it from things that happened while I was growing up, and in our family in general too. We talk a lot about my brothers and what it was like in our home. So yeah, most of it comes from our own personal experience.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit about your family dynamics, and how did the other family members process the writing of the book too?
Well, our 2 sons have both written a number of books as well, and so in our family, it's if you do anything foolish, then you're open game for the next book and illustration that comes along. So they have tormented their little sister for years, and so they knew a book was eventually coming. And,
a truth-telling.
Telling the rest of the story.
Oh, good. Well, can you give us an example of the status quo that you talk about in the book?
Well, you know, the essence of the book is that there's lots of books on parenting, and a lot of the books describe you should do this and you should do that. But I travel and speak around the world. I'm in churches and around people all the time. And probably, without a doubt, the most anguished things that I hear are parents who are grieving over their kids, who were sweet kids growing up, oftentimes were in church growing up, then they hit college or high school, and suddenly it's like they're different people. And they don't want to go to church, they don't believe in God, they abandon the values that they were taught. And these parents are looking in discouragement, saying, but I took them to church every Sunday. I mean, they grew up they went to the youth group. Mm-hmm. What happened? And so really, part of what this book is about is saying, we're not trying to tell you just how to do it. What we're really challenging you with is to examine what you are doing. Because we talk a lot about conventional wisdom, which is, you know, when it gets to parenting, what do? You parent the way you were parented. You do what your mom did, what your dad did. You vacation the way you were taught. And when it comes to getting your kids to school, or what goals you have for them, what discipline, you sort of do what everybody else is doing. You do, and because it's kind of conventional wisdom, everybody does a lot of the same things. But they say that at least 70% of kids who grow up going to church will walk away from God and the church by the time they hit college. And so our question would be, if 70% of kids are rejecting the faith they grew up in, shouldn't we be doing some things a little differently and not just keep doing the same things that are getting the same results? And so this whole book, what we really do is we push back on what we call conventional wisdom, which is sort of the default of what most parents do. And I've been fortunate, I'm grateful, I have a great wife who's a great mom, but all three of our kids they're all in seminary right now, all studying for ministry, all working on a theology degree. They're all Christian writers. All of my brothers and my sister are all in full-time Christian ministry. And so we have a heritage of raising up kids who walk with God. And so people ask us, well, how did that happen? How did you get all your kids to love God when they were in college? And when we began to look at what we did, we realized we actually broke a lot of rules. We actually went against what a lot of parents were doing. We got criticized for things that no other Christian parent in our church was doing. And they would say, well, what kind of parents are you? You don't do this, you don't do that. And we just realized, you know what? I think instinctively God, by His Spirit, kept telling us, if you want your kids to thrive, don't just do what everyone else is doing here. I'll show you a better way. And so we just kind of write about that to say it's not that one way is better than another. The real message is, as a parent, are you prepared to let God guide you? Because even what worked well with your oldest child, it may be a total failure with your second child. And can the Spirit of God help customize your parenting so that each child is in a place they can thrive?
So explain to us some of those unconventional methods, if you will.
Well, one thing that we talk a little bit about is when I was in grade 7, I had this revelation, and I probably wasn't the first kid to ever have that revelation, but I decided that I didn't want to go to school anymore. But the truth is I didn't want to quit school completely, but I decided I wanted to try homeschooling. And that was something that, there were other people doing it at the time, but it definitely wasn't, and I don't think it still is, the norm. So I decided that the best way to convince my parents to let me do something so different was to make a list of pros and cons of that decision. And so I spent the afternoon and I made a really, really long list of all the pros. And then I had one con, which was that I would miss one of my friends at school. And so I talked to them, and they were really surprised because I was actually doing really well in school. I'd always gotten really good grades. I was a teacher's pet. I had friends. It wasn't like I was spending every single day at school being bullied or in misery, but I just knew that there were some advantages that I'd have homeschooling that I maybe never would have at public school. I would have more freedom in my schedule to travel some with my dad and to take different classes that I wanted to. Some of my friends were doing a book club or figure skating lessons, or it would just really be a schedule more suited to my needs, and for me personally that would be a lot better. And so they decided that they would let me try it out, and it really ended up being the best thing that I ever did. Not everyone is meant to homeschool, but we just knew that was something that for me that it would just really be the best way for me to thrive in my education. And so, we got some flack from some other people who didn't really understand. That was just one example of a way that we decided to try something else. And
it's interesting too, because we hadn't planned to do that. We're not homeschoolers, we weren't waving that flag. But for her, she was tired of wasting her time. She would say, Mom and Dad, I could get done in 2 hours what it takes all day to do going to school and having all the kids being dealt with and homework at night where I can't go to youth group because I've got homework all night after being at school all day. She said, I can get all this thing done and have time to do church and figure skate and be rested and get more sleep. And so she presented all this, and we never thought about doing that. But we thought, well, you know what? Why not? Like, no one else is doing that, and people think we're sort of strange, maybe, and pull our kid out of a successful school experience. But what we found is that just doing well, like, they said, well, she's doing fine in school. And we'd say, yeah, but doing fine's not enough for life. Like, is she thriving? I don't think she's thriving. And that was the dangerous thing. If she was coming home in tears every day, we would have said, hey, we got to make a change. But she was doing great. But she knew that there's still more. And as a parent, you think, I'd hate to get to the end of my life and say, well, she got by, she made it through, she hung in there. And I think, I don't want my kid to hang in there. I want my kid to thrive. And so that's just one, and we're not saying everyone should homeschool. We're just saying, in our case, that was, my oldest son never homeschooled. He went straight, for him that probably wouldn't have been the best. But for her it was. And so we decided it's not a cookie cutter. Each child you say, and God, what would help this child thrive? I should just add, the people that criticized or questioned were all people who had never homeschooled. They had all the most advice for us about how she'd never make it to college, if she was homeschooled, never be prepared, socially she'd be awkward. And, she was 4-point student all through college and is working on her first book, working on 2 master's degrees right now. And so much of the advice, if we listened to people who had never experienced it themselves but were passing on conventional wisdom, we would have missed out on a great experience for her. And so one of the reasons with the book is we just really want to encourage parents to say, don't ask, is your kid getting by? Are they passing? Are they complaining or not complaining? But you look at each child and say, the way I'm parenting this child, are they thriving right now? And if they're not, then Holy Spirit, what adjustments could I make so that this child does thrive?
It sounds like you listened to the Lord, you listened to your child, and you didn't listen to your critics.
Yeah. Isn't it sad how much parenting is done
is.
because we don't want to look like we're different or we're not good parents, and we just had to say we don't care what anybody else thinks. It's at the end of the day, did we do the best for this child?
That's wonderful. And so what advice would you give parents that need help with their parenting skills?
Well, take a moment, and in the book what we do is we look at a number of things and say, now here's some things of very conventional wisdom. Look at how you're handling each one of these things and ask yourself, am I just making assumptions here? What I find with parents is over and over again, when they come and tell me about a troubled child they have, and I've had countless parents pull me aside at a conference somewhere and they'll say, we're just grieving over our daughter or our son. And, and you start to hear them, and what you realize is, in their spirit, most of the time, they know what they should do. Like I've had parents say, we know we should pull our kid out of that school. We know we should get them away from those friends, or they hate these lessons. We know we should just stop. But, we've already paid, or we don't know we can afford this, or how would we work out the logistics? And so one of our greatest things, a piece of advice is, I think the Spirit of God knows exactly what you should do with your kids, and listen to Him, trust His voice, and have the courage to act on what the Spirit of God's telling you. And at the end of the day, don't worry about what other people are telling you. I mean, seek advice, seek counsel, but at the end of the day, let the Spirit of God help you, and then just do it. Yes. And if you may have never done before, when we homeschooled Carrie, none of our relatives had ever homeschooled before. And so it was something that it was just not in our family tree to do. Mm-hmm. And so for us, that was a big step.
Yes.
And I certainly didn't want to imperil her college education or anything else.
Sure.
But we had at a certain point just have the courage to follow what we sense God telling us to do.
Mm-hmm. So, Carrie, what advice would you give parents?
I think the biggest piece of advice is to really listen to your kids, because a lot of times they know what is best for them, sometimes even better than their parents might know. I mean, obviously, age comes in to play. A really young kid needs a lot more guidance, but for some things, I think even just having a really good dialogue with them so that you're catching their feelings and thoughts towards things, and then instead of just writing it off, if it's maybe not what you think, what you did, or what your parents did, really take the time to consider that there may be options out there for your kid that you never had thought of before. Because for each kid, it might be something completely different.
Yes, that's great. So is there anything else that you would like our viewers and listeners to know about your book? Maybe how they can get it, or how you can resource them?
Well, we encourage people to get it. Our website is www.blackaby.org, where you get all the Blackaby books that have been written, and a lot of great resources out there. And we just encourage parents in particular. I've led a number of different things in my life. Hands down, the greatest leadership challenge I've ever had has been leading in the home, leading my children. And yet, and yet I know parents who never read a parenting book, never go to a parenting seminar. And I would think, my goodness, of all the things you want to make sure you get right, it's leading your own kids. So, you have to read every book out there, but grab some things that are helpful resources. And we hope this will be one. It won't tell you step 1, 2, 3 as much as we hope it'll make you think and just examine what you're doing. and keep that picture of each of your children thriving before you, and say, until I get to that point, I'm not giving up.
Thank you so much. And it's been a privilege for me to guest host on Heritage of Truth with Jeanne Dennis. And my guests again are Carrie and Richard, Dr. Richard Blackaby, and their book is Rethinking Best Parenting Practices So Your Child Can Thrive. I'm Sheryl Giesbrecht.